Today I'm here with my friend Jeanette Bennett. She has always been kind of an idol to me.
Wow.
And I know you're super busy, and I've said this to you so many times, but you're super busy. And I tried a few times. I'm like, I know, I'm feeling embarrassed to even ask, but you got to come on my podcast. And one of the reasons why is because she's always interviewing other people. But I wanted to learn more about you. And when I say she is always interviewing other people, here's why. So not only is she a mom and wife, but she's a founder of Utah Valley Magazine, BusinessQ Magazine, UV Bride, UVU Board of Trustees, Chief Visionary Officer at Thanksgiving Point. And I know that personally that there's so many other things too, because I just said this to Jeanette, that every event I go to, every fundraiser, she's the one hosting. Like everyone asks her to host because you're so legitimate,
Wow.
you know?
It's been a surprising part of my life, but it's been fun.
But she's also humble, which is
Oh,
really nice.
thank you.
But anyway, one thing I wanted to say about Utah Valley Magazine, I've never, like, I'm from Arizona and I live here obviously now in Utah, but I've never seen a local magazine, like a county magazine, that's so popular. Like
Oh, I
it's,
love to hear that.
no,
That's
I'm
awesome.
serious. Like, I don't know what the numbers are.
Mm.
Obviously, you probably know what those numbers are, but like comparatively, like I've never heard of a magazine that's so well known and that people like, like even one time, this is even before I met you, my son was voted cutest kid or whatever in
I love that.
2017. I know. And
Of
I
course
was,
he was.
well, I didn't
That's
even
cute.
enter him. Actually, our neighbor
Oh,
entered him. And I was
that's
like,
fun.
what? That's the coolest thing ever. And so many people were calling and texting me from that. Like, oh, I saw Keller in Utah Valley Magazine. Because everyone reads it. Nobody reads other magazines. Like, it's just really cool. So you've built up
Oh, thank you.
kind of what I feel is this empire. And if you look at your Instagram page, you're, like I said, you're invited to every major thing. You're usually hosting it. And you've built up so much, and you've also been this wife and mother. How have you done that? That's a huge question, but how have you done that?
Well, I don't feel like I've done it perfectly. That's one thing.
Well, yeah, of course
But
not.
I feel like you feel called to do this podcast. I feel called to do the things that I've been working on. And when I feel like my feet are moving in the right direction, it is amazing how things just kind of fall into place.
Yeah.
And I've learned so much through the years from people I've interviewed. For example, Michael McLean taught me something that I use almost every week. And he had a busy life, just like you and I do. And he said that he would often say prayers of like, I don't have time to work on this song, but Heavenly Father, please, on Friday morning when I finally have time, will you have it ready for me? And I'll be ready to like download it from you and work on it. And so sometimes I've done that with articles and magazines and Relief Society projects or other church related projects where I'm like, Heavenly Father, I'm doing my best, but I'm not going to get to this. But I need you to give my 3 hours of work, make that worth 10 hours, because that's the only way this is going to work. Like really to have specific prayers.
I
Been one of my keys.
love that. I actually got chills when you said that because I had 3 instances in my head immediately come, remember when you did that? Remember when you did that? Remember? Absolutely. In fact, when I went back when I was pregnant, very pregnant with number 5, and my kids are very close together, I went back to go finish getting my degree from BYU. And I remember my husband saying, how on earth are you going to do this? And he's like, I don't understand how you keep getting A's. I'm like, I don't understand how I keep getting A's. It's not me. But I agree with that. I love that principle that like you do everything you can, but really say a prayer and rely on God and he will make up the difference. So I love that you said that. And this wasn't even something I was going to ask, but what would you say to someone who maybe doesn't believe in God or doesn't believe in prayer? Does that actually really happen?
I would say give it a try.
Yeah, don't knock it till you try it.
Give it a try. Say a prayer. Talk to God. Ask him if he loves you. Ask him how he feels about you, and then listen. And then tell me how you feel about prayer.
Wow.
Because that's a prayer Heavenly Father will answer.
Wow.
If you ask him how he feels about you. So I'd say give it a try. And if you feel, that maybe you don't feel God is listening to you or you haven't felt close to him for a long time, I mean, I think we all go through ebbs and flows of that, right? And that anyone in the scriptures, anyone who's been human has had ups and downs. But just, take one step toward him and see if he takes a step back. Be open-minded to it.
And you think you will?
I think he will. He loves us so much.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I know. There's a lot of things, like my circle of things I know for sure has gotten smaller through the years. Like, what do I know for sure? About, oh yeah, definitely a college degree is for everybody. Okay, that used to be in the middle. Now it's like, maybe, it's for me, but maybe it's not for everybody. My circle of things that are really true is maybe small, but one of them is that God loves us, that there is a God and that he loves us. Yeah.
Wow. I love that so much. If I remember this correctly, I remember we were at one of these events that you're at. It's for every event I go to.
We were wearing sequins. What was it? Yeah.
Something. I swear you were wearing sequins.
I'm sure I was.
And you had said that you would overcome some really serious health struggles, right? Do you mind touching on that?
Yeah, so I had, in the year of COVID was just a crazy year for the world and for me personally. So I was having some symptoms of what we thought was MS. And as we started to do some different scans and things, what we found was not MS, but we found thyroid cancer. And so that was a journey of trying to connect with heaven, trying to figure out what to do for me personally, for our business, for life during COVID, all of this. And that was, we could dive deeper into that, but that was like a really defining part of my life. Now that's like an easier, shall we say, cancer to go through. I didn't have to go through chemotherapy. I did have to get my thyroid out. And then as we were getting me cleared of thyroid cancer, we found a growth on my pancreas that is still there, but I feel like I've had some miracles where it has not grown. It has stayed precancerous, and my Huntsman team is keeping a really close eye on it. They study a lot of precancerous markers, so that because pancreatic cancer is basically a death sentence. So currently working with Evan on how to deal with that, but we just keep testing it. I at one time had to scheduled a surgery to take out half my pancreas, and then when I woke up from the pre-op biopsy, they said it has actually shrunk a little bit. Let's just keep watching it. So that whole thing has given me the miracle that I prayed for my thyroid. I wanted my thyroid cancer to go away, and I actually thought I had a ton of faith for that, and it didn't go away. I got another tumor in that process of me trying, to pray it away. But then with the pancreas, I feel like I have had some miracles of it just staying calm. So
what's the status right now? Like, we're just kind of waiting and seeing, and
so just continued scans and things like that, and just figuring out my body post-thyroid and hormones and everything. We're still not where I want to be. I feel good. I want to feel amazing, So we're still working on that. And as far as the pancreas, I have a pancreas team up at Huntsman, and we're just continuing to scan it. But I actually don't give it very much energy. Like when I have the day of the scan, I'm all in and all of that. But I don't wake up in the morning worrying about it.
See, that's what I love about you. And you can tell that. Like, anytime I've ever spoken with Jeanette, it's like, life is great. And, and even when you told me about the cancer, you're like, yeah, but we're just going to watch it. And I'm like, you were the most positive go-getter person, which is why I want you in my life. I want other people to learn how to be that way. Yeah.
Well, cancer is a gift in a way. I mean, I of course wouldn't have chosen it, and I don't wish it on anyone, but I've met people I wouldn't have met otherwise. I've had thoughts I wouldn't have had otherwise. I feel like I have an appreciation for just the everyday, like my kids and things like that. I'm less worried about keeping a clean house and a clean car, and I'm more worried about how can we pack in stuff to life?
I need to be like that.
How could we have more fun or go on more trips or read more books or do things that actually matter? I think sometimes we spend a lot of time on things that don't actually matter.
Yeah.
Which
is kind of where I am. I'm actually glad you said that. This is probably more for me than anyone else.
That's therapy for both of us. Yeah.
I want to learn how to be like that more. What if you could give me one suggestion on not being so every day I start with okay, I have 12 things to clean. And I start feeling stressed because I have so many, young kids, but I always have this feeling, this kind of soft feeling in the back of my head, actually you should probably be spending time with your kids. And I'm always like, well, I got this laundry and I got these dishes, and
it's hard because those things matter in the moment, but I don't think we want our kids remembering us saying, let's clean the house,
yeah,
And at a funeral, I've been to a few funerals lately, unfortunately, and at a funeral, nobody ever talks about how much the person weighed, how clean their house was. Nobody talks about that at all. No. It's about how they made people feel, the memories and the feelings and the love.
Yeah.
And so that matters so much more,
It really does.
And I also think, and this has kind of been, I have 5 kids and a business and all these other things. There's no way I can get everything perfect.
Yeah.
So any perfectionism that I used to have is gone because I just can't. So 80% is usually pretty good for me.
Yeah. Which is great.
80% of a clean house or 80%.
Yeah.
I do try and get our magazines pretty polished, but
oh, your magazines are perfect.
There's going to be errors. There have been errors that haunt me a little bit. Guess what? Life goes on.
Yeah.
It's time to move on.
Well, speaking of your kids, you said you have 5 kids. What are their ages?
So I have 2 that are married and done with college. They're 26 and 23. Right? Yes. My son and his wife are expecting our first grandchild It's really exciting. So I kind of feel like I have three families. So I have those two, boy and a girl, raised them together. They went to BYU together. They're done, married, doing great. And then I have a son on a mission. He's 20.
Wow.
And I have a daughter who's 18. She's almost 19. And then I have a 7-year-old. So I kind of have the olders, the middles, and then my
7-year-old.
Sorry, there's a 7-year gap. She's 11.
She's 11. Oh, I'm like, wow. That's so, well,
I
still
got
though.
it. 7-year gap. She's 11. She's in 6th grade.
Oh,
So she's just little and fun, and she's our family mascot. And so it's been a fun
So cute.
addition. And that was one where heaven made it extremely clear that she was coming.
wow.
And so
How? What do you mean by that? Like, what happened?
so many things. So she's named Lola Fern. And the reason for that is my grandma was Lola Dawn. But anyway, Lola, my grandma, died when I was 10 of cancer. And so I knew her a little bit, but I knew her as a sick person, honestly, who lived in another state.
Yeah.
So I didn't know her super well. But after she passed away, I had multiple experiences where I would just feel her close or just have experiences like that. And when felt like I was done with my family, I had a number of experiences, including I was running a half marathon. Used to be a runner back when I had a thyroid.
Of course you were.
And it was a race for cancer. And so they wanted us to put a name on our back of someone we were running for. And so I put my grandma's name on there. And I just thought about her, and 13 miles is a long time and your mind gets kind of whatever. And so I was like, I'm going to think of everything I can remember about her. Just every memory and everything I knew about like her background, her education. And she studied English and I studied journalism. And I was like, I bet we would love to talk about words. And she loved music and I love music. And I bet we would love to play the piano together. And then I thought about how she had 2 boys, 2 girls. That was the way her family was. My mom was one of those girls. And then she had a caboose girl. And I had this really distinct feeling, never had it before or since, where I felt like I almost left the race for a second. And she messaged me in how spirits do. And she said, you still have your Mary, which was the name of her caboose daughter. You still have your Mary. She said it in a way I understood.
Oh, that gave me chills.
And then it was like, okay, I hit the pavement again. I'm back in the race. And I'm like, wow. She said, you still have your Mary. And to me, that meant you have a 5th child, a girl, So I thought about that the rest of the race. And then I got home and Haley, who's my 23-year-old now, she was 11 at the time. She said, Mom, I had the most distinct dream this morning. And she said, it was my birthday and my present was a baby sister.
Oh,
and I said, tell me every detail of this dream. We got to think through this. And because she was having that dream right when I was in the race, that early Saturday morning. And you could never plan this kind of thing, but I ended up feeling like through that and other experiences, I'm going to welcome another baby. And I was due on Haley's birthday.
Wow.
She came 4 days early, so they don't share her birthday, but you cannot time that,
No,
right? You cannot time the due date. And because my grandma Lola helped me know she was coming, we named her after Lola. And, I had my Mary. And I think God does speak to us in ways that make sense to us in a really efficient way. He wouldn't no one would say to someone else, you should have your Mary. People would be like, what does that mean?
Right.
But I knew what my grandma meant.
Well, he knows you.
Yeah. And I knew what he meant. And through my grandma was able to say, you still have like your caboose baby girl. And so in the fewest words possible, that message was given to me. So it's been, it was hard. I had kids in high school and I had a baby. Yeah. So that was kind of tricky, nursing a baby at the high school basketball game.
Well, you're in Utah. You just fit right in.
Yeah, that's true. But, it's been awesome. She's an only child basically at home now because everyone's off to college or married and whatever. And that's been a little hard for her.
She gets to be an aunt at 11 or 12.
Oh, she is so excited. And this baby is due her same birth week. So
really?
The baby's due March 14th.
The baby could be born on her birthday.
I know.
Oh,
12 years later.
What a beautiful
and 12
thing.
years, from my older daughter to Lola to the granddaughter. So we have baby girls in March every 12 years. It's a thing.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. I've seen a little bit how you interact with your kids. And obviously, I don't know that super well, but from the outside, it looks like you guys have this fantastic relationship. How have you been able to do that and still be doing, you have a lot of businesses. How have you been able to maintain these relationships with your kids?
I think intentionality, imperfection, transparency.
Randy Garn said that same thing the other day, by the
Really?
way. He said being intentional. It's exactly the first word you just said and what he said too. Sorry, go on.
I love that. And maybe I learned that from him, or maybe he learned it from me. I don't know. I think just, every Sunday night we sit down as a family, and this has been happening now for, 25 years, and we plan out the week. And I tell my family my schedule, as well as it's not just about their junior jazz game. It's also about like, I have an interview, or I have this podcast, or I have, I want them to know my schedule too, so that they can pray for me. They can cheer me on. If I'm not home when they get home from school, they know why. And we just really have a lot of conversations about that. I grew up in Idaho. My dad was not a farmer, but we lived among farms.
Yeah.
And those kids work hard, right? Farm kids work hard.
Yeah.
And so I tell my kids, this is our farm. Like, we're growing magazines, we're growing words, we're working together.
So cool.
And, I'm going to make the magazines, but what I need you to do is I need you to empty the dishwasher. That's what you're doing on our farm, or whatever the tasks might be. Because I want them to see that this is like a team sport here.
Yeah.
And especially when we had Lola, my youngest, like I told everyone, this isn't just my baby. Like, I'm having this baby for our family,
Wow.
and I'm going to need all your help. And so they really have.
Because you had already started the magazine at that point.
Yeah. So I started it 24 years ago. So I had 2 kids, 2 babies at that point, 2 kids in diapers. And then, have added the other kids since.
How did you start that? I'm asking this from the angle of, I remember there was a time in my life where I felt somewhat aimless. I didn't quite know, what should I be doing with my time? And like, I felt in a little bit of a rut, like I want to be doing something impactful. I want to be doing something successful. How does someone get started? Because you've built up this huge thing, and obviously it wasn't overnight, but how did you get started?
I graduated in journalism from BYU. I had my bachelor's and master's in journalism from there.
Awesome.
I worked at the New Era magazine for the LDS Church.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
And then I worked at the Deseret News. And then I was expecting my first baby. And this was before work from home. It was before texting. It was before cell phones. Women today have it honestly so much better.
Oh, yeah.
They really do. So I was working downtown at the Deseret News at a job I loved until I went into labor. I loved the job, and I planned to be back.
Strong.
I planned to be back after 6 weeks. But as soon as I had the baby, I was like, I'm not going back. There wasn't an option of working from home. And I didn't want to be downtown for 10, 11, 12 hours a day when you add the commute. That was not going to be the life for me. Everybody gets to make their choices, but I was like, are there other options, Yeah. And so that's when I started thinking like an entrepreneur. I had gotten a business minor at BYU, but only because I thought I'd write about business. I actually didn't intend to start a business, but becoming a mom made me think, what are my options? I'm always trying to fit in the most things. I still am like that. How can I fit in the most things in one day and in one lifetime? And being an entrepreneur was the solution that I came up with at the time of like, I think if I'm doing my own thing, then I don't have to leave this baby, and maybe I can make it work. And even if I just make a little bit, I wouldn't have to pay for daycare. That was honestly a huge part of my initial motivation. And then we had a little starter home. My husband and I, with help from my dad, had built, like literally done as much as we could, shingles and painting and the brickwork even. And we had a little bit of equity in that, and we sold that house to print the first issue of Utah Valley Magazine. Moved back into an apartment with our 2 babies, and the first edition was September 2000. And we printed it using money from our starter home. I'm sure scaring everyone around us because I was 25 when we printed that first issue.
A baby.
I was a kid. Tons of excitement, tons of positivity, tons of hope. And we knew how to live on nothing. We both were children of school teachers. So, we were used to no frills. And then we'd been college students, no frills.
Yeah.
And so we were still in that kind of no frills. So we were just tight on our budget. I remember the first time I spent money on something I didn't actually need to survive. And it was a little dinosaur cassette for my little boy. Oh. It was because he loved dinosaurs, and I'm like,
so sweet. You remember that?
I'm going to spend this $10.99 on something we don't actually need, and that felt like luxury to me.
Wow.
Yeah. So those early years were super tight. I always had a calculator in my head of what the printing was going to cost and the postage, and if we sell one more ad, and if we get this, then they're.
So but you had to go to businesses and get them to place an ad. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, I just drew some stuff and then I had it printed. That's like. Because every page has an ad, and then you have to have an interesting story, and then you have to have something eye-catching. I don't know all the elements of it. But.
So that's the miracle of it all, is that there were a few businesses who took a risk on us.
Wow.
in 2020, my intention was to throw, our magazine was going to turn 20. And I had envisioned this huge party where I was going to invite
It's the
all
worst
of our
year.
advertisers and our cover stories, hopefully have some of them perform, some of the singers and that, and just throw this huge thank you to the community. And then it was COVID, I went through cancer and all that. So I switched it, and I ended up having a party just for all the people who had worked for me for 20 years. Wow. And we worked hard to track down everybody, and we had a great turnout. It was 2 weeks after my cancer surgery that we had this party.
Oh my goodness.
But I was so eager to say thank you. I mean, it was just this time of life when I was like so full of gratitude, that I get to stay alive, that I've run this business that logically shouldn't have succeeded. Like, of course I didn't do that on my own. I want to say thank you to every advertiser, every employee, It was just this overwhelming joy that I felt, which is going back to like one of the gifts of cancer, is that it just throws all your priorities out on the table and you get to reorganize. And loving and thanking people, including God, but including all the other people in your life, like went way to the top of the list.
That says so much about you, though. Like, you could have been like, yeah, you're welcome, I'm throwing you this party. You know what I mean? Like, you could have been like that, but instead you have this overwhelming gratitude for people around you when you probably did a lot for them. That says so much about you. That's a very Christ-like feature. You said something in there that really stuck with me. You said because of having this baby, you needed to find another way to do something. So from my limited perspective in this, it seems like had you not had that baby, you probably wouldn't have had that opportunity. And there's so much, and I'm not being political or anything, but there's so much push right now on basically kids ruining your lives. You can't do anything if you have kids. And yet, because you had this child, you were given these opportunities. And I really feel like the sacrifice of having children has propelled me to do other things.
Oh,
and it
absolutely.
sounds like you're saying that too.
Yeah, and I would shout that from the rooftops.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. That is a concern I have about our civilization in general, is that we're devaluing fertility. We're devaluing families. For several years, I went back to the Commission on the Status of Women at the United Nations with a group of women.
You're amazing.
And I feel like I was kind of called to be part of that for that short time. And one of the things that I liked to say, I participated in a few presentations, but also I would just sit in the back of other presentations and make comments, because the prevailing wisdom there was for women to have equality, they had to be less feminine, basically, which meant don't get married, don't have kids, like be like a man. And I wanted to say, you know what? I have 4 or 5 kids, depending on what year I was there. And I own a business, and having children has not stopped my career. It's only made my life better. It's not an either or. And I think that's not a message women are hearing as much these days. They feel that if you have children or if you prioritize family life, that is going to take away other opportunities. And it's been the exact opposite in my life.
Wow. I love that you are so bold to say that, because that's going to receive some hate.
Well, and I am not trying to prescribe that anyone has any sort of family size, right? I think there's a lot of factors that go into that.
Sure.
A lot of factors. I'm just saying, like, if you look back at the history of civilization, what has allowed civilization to continue? It's having children.
Right.
If we didn't,
pretty logical.
Like, our species would cease to exist in one generation if we were all like, oh, having kids is lame. That's so grandma-like, that's so old-fashioned to have kids. Okay, well, do we want to still have a society? Like, do we want
what's going to happen?
And I also feel like one of my professors that had a huge impact on me, a female professor, was not of my faith, and she was of that wisdom that like career is everything, but she had 2 kids really close together to like check it off and get it out of the way. And I knew her when she was about 55, and those 2 kids were both leaving home, one after another. Yeah. And she looked me in the eye and she said, don't be like me. Don't think your career is more important. Because she says, I'm looking at my kids leaving me, and I thought they were a distraction. They're everything. And I didn't know that, And it made a huge impact on me, because I was one who wanted a big career, and I've had a career that I've loved. I think, maybe in another life I hadn't had kids, I'd probably be in Manhattan working on some magazine and probably have a better haircut or like spend more time at the spa.
Well, I think you have
but
great
like,
hair, but
it is a different set of choices. We all get to choose. We all get to choose a lot of things. But like that professor, I'm now there. I'm 49 years old. I now feel exactly like she does. Like I'm really proud of my career. It's awesome. I've been really blessed with opportunities and accolades. But like my kids and now a grandkid on the way, like, wow, how lucky am I? That on Thanksgiving Day, I have multiple people that I love, that I get to celebrate birthdays with them. And also because I had that cancer journey, I appreciate every day and every opportunity and every holiday and every, that I get to spend with them. But like, I don't want to be 60 and be cuddled up with my magazines thinking like, this is the only thing that matters. This is my legacy. Because guess what? My magazines are probably all in the landfill for the most part, like that's not gonna keep me company as I get older.
This is so profound coming from you because I mean, I've known you for a few years now, but we have, in fact, on our coffee table right out there, we have a bunch of Utah Valley, mostly because like so many of our friends are on the cover and we like to have them there. It's like, because my kids will be like, look, there's Uncle James and Aunt Andrew, it's like super cute. But anyway, I read through every single one and I always look at these and I think, wow, these women, they have, these huge careers and they're being spotlighted for this and for that and for whatever. And this is really profound. If I can say something, I hope this comes across the right way, because I kind of had this mentality that like, okay, well, lowly stay-at-home moms like me are just not qualified for that sort of thing. You know what I mean? But I don't feel from my own perspective like less than or anything, because I love what I do and I wouldn't want it any other way. But I sometimes feel like everyone else looking at me thinks my job is kind of pathetic. You know what I mean? And I've actually had someone say that. So I used to manage like large medical clinics. And I remember I ran into some of my old employees after I had a couple babies at this point. And they said, so are you working right now? I was like, well, yeah, but
working really hard 24/7.
I'm like, yeah, but just not outside my home. And they said, ugh, and they rolled their eyes. They're like, no, I mean like a real job. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, this is what people think, but this job is so rewarding. It is so much more rewarding than anything I have ever done in my life. And it might not look cool to anyone else, but I think it's amazing. Even those moments, middle of the night when I'm like cleaning up diarrhea and whatnot, and like you always feel this like piece of what I'm doing is right and good, And I think that this is something that you can speak to that not a ton of women can. You've been this all-in mom, this all-in church leader, and this all-in businesswoman, and I just don't understand how that's even possible.
Well, there's a lot of balls dropping too, and I depend on my husband, my kids, my staff. If you looked in my car right now, it's a mix of all the things. It's got Relief Society things that need to be handed out. It's got probably 4 pairs of shoes. From
I feel so bad you're even here. Thank you.
No, it's just, I'm always just kind of moving on to the next thing. So I don't want anyone to look at it and think, oh, like you have to, or she's doing perfectly at all that, because I'm not. And I don't want to present that. And I'm also, I hope, careful to the women in my world and my own daughters. I don't want them to think that what I'm doing is what's the plan for everybody.
Sure.
I feel like one of the beauties of being a woman is that things are a little less set out for her, right? So that it's like in our faith, the missions, like for the young men, they're expected to go for the most part, and for girls it's like figure it out, right?
If you want to.
And I think most men and young men, as they're growing up, they think, what am I going to do as a career for the rest of my life? And for a lot of women, they have the privilege during at least some parts of their life of choosing whether to do that or not. So guess what? That gives us a lot of reasons to talk to heaven and really figure it out and renegotiate. And every time I've had a baby, I've figured it out. I've pulled back from work. None of my babies have taken a bottle, so I've nursed them all for a year. That has kept me really close to them.
I have mad respect right now.
Yeah, because, and I feel like that was Heavenly Father being like, okay, you're not going to get too caught up in this career thing, because every 2 or 3 hours you're going to feed this baby, And it's been awesome. So like true. I was moderating the governor's debate, and I was sitting in the car nursing my baby, right before it, in my red suit, and I was watching all the dignitaries walk in, and hopefully they weren't seeing me, but I was just like, I'm trying to juggle a lot right now, but I'm doing the absolute best I can. And I'll hand the baby off for a few hours while I go do the governor's debate, and then get that baby again because
You are
he's going to
so
be hungry.
amazing.
No, I feel like I've been blessed and doors have opened, but every woman has a different journey,
Yeah.
a different path, different timeline, different number of children, different,
Yeah.
and some women won't have children. And I hope that no one feels that I feel that there is a cookie cutter, because I actually feel the exact opposite. I feel like there's not a cookie cutter.
Exactly.
And that's what's so cool. And I
Yeah.
think we as women sometimes are a little judgmental of each other if they don't match our cookie cutter.
Sure.
But I do hope that we embrace our femininity instead of fight against it.
Oh, I love that line. I love that line that you just said, because there's nothing wrong. There's everything right about that.
Absolutely.
And I like something you said right before that too, that you feel called, or you feel called to do this thing. And this isn't like you just wanted the accolades of, running a big business. You felt called to do this. Maybe you said that before we even started recording when we were talking, but I love that you were open to whatever God wanted you to do. And for some people, that is, be strictly a stay-at-home mom, focus 100% on that. And for some women, it's, I want you to also be a stay-at-home mom, but I want you to start a huge magazine company, because you've touched so many lives. When you read through these articles, I've never seen something in there that didn't make me feel inspired to be better.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that.
I'm serious. And I don't know what your MO is for that, but I could kind of sense it out. So I've read several of these magazines, and everything is so like, oh, I could do that. Well, I guess I can do this. Or, you know what I mean? Like, you're so inspiring. And I know that you oversee what gets actually put out there. And I'm sure you have a whole team of people, but I know you have a big part in that. And so what is your goal of that magazine?
Positivity, first of all. I love that I've pursued publishing and I've pursued journalism, but a lot of what we think of with journalism is negativity.
Yeah.
And sensationalizing stories. And I've tried to be the other side of things.
Yeah.
If you look in the scriptures, publish good tidings is like a phrase that you could Google there. And I'm like, we want to publish good tidings.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been a little thing of like, no, this needs to uplift people. We need to make the world a better place. Plus, this community is small enough.
Yeah.
If I print something that is negative or interrogative in the wrong way, I'm going to see that person again.
Oh, yeah.
And I am not looking to ruin anyone's life.
Oh.
I'm not looking to cause any sort of rifts in the community or in the business community. I'm looking to lift people up. So there's definitely times that I've written stories, and there's sides of the story that I've chosen not to include because it's not maybe uplifting, or maybe that part of the story is still working its way out. Yeah. And me shining a light on that is not going to be helpful, So I try and just shine a light on things that will be helpful. So like one of the things we've done off and on is some happy couples. So we've featured different marriages.
I just saw that actually.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Like there's different ways to get through things, and we like to write about people who've gone through hard things.
Yeah.
And then they've learned something from it. We do our high schoolers who will change the world. That's a fun piece we do every year where we show that there's lots of different ways to do high school. You can be the athlete and they get a lot of publicity, but you can also be just the really good student, or you can be the service club person, or you can be the cancer survivor that like lifts everybody up, or you can be the perfect attendance kid. Like there's lots of ways to do it. And I guess that would be one of my overall messages to people is there's just lots of ways to do it. And we all get to be our best selves. And wouldn't it be boring if we were all the same? That would be a really boring society. I would have nothing to write about, frankly, if there were no stories, of what people did, the different things that people face and learn.
Well, it's kind of ironic that you focus on positivity, and it is really positive because they're actually really interesting stories. Like I'm not kidding. I'm not just saying this because you're right here. Just the other day when we got our mail, I had a huge stack because we'd been out of town, and plus I'm irresponsible and hadn't checked my mail in a while, but I was looking through everything, like toss. And then I was like, oh yeah, Utah. And I searched through everything. I'm like, these are actually really interesting stories.
I love to hear that.
No, I'm serious. I really love it. And my kids love it too. Lastly, I just wanted to ask, how have you been able to maintain a good marriage through, kids and businesses and hosting the governor's debate and, which there's a lot of that, by the way. I don't even know where to start. I swear, I'm not exaggerating. Every event I go to, she's hosting
It's been a lot the past few years, but it's been fun. Marriage-wise, so when we were engaged, one of my greatest fears was boredom in marriage. Because I would often see people, I would often see people like my age now that were out at restaurants on Friday nights not talking to each other.
Oh.
Right. And this was before cell phones, but I would just see people like looking out the window. And I would just look at those things and go, is marriage boring? Like, at some point, have you told them every story about third grade and every thought you've had about politics, and then you really have nothing more to say? Like, honestly, that was a legit fear I had, is the boredom that might happen in marriage. But I will say that starting a business and having kids, there's never any boredom. There's always plenty to dream about, plenty to talk about, plenty to problem solve. Not everything is perfect, and we don't agree on everything. Yeah. But I will say that working together, I think, has had some blessings for our marriage, because when we're in a business environment and we're working through a disagreement of some kind, what we should feature, whether we should do this or that, and we have an audience watching us work through that, you learn to do things more unemotionally and more logically, and more, let me listen to you, and I'll, then I'll talk. And because just that's a more professional way to work through something. But that has also carried...
You don't like scream at each other in front of everyone?
No. But then that's carried home as well, where it's so like, cool. Okay, let's work through this little situation. I also feel like in our situation at work, I'm more of like the type A personality and the red personality, and I'm taking charge. And at home, we actually have the opposite roles.
Seriously?
He's more of take charge, and I'm more of like
That's fascinating.
The peaceful, take a step back person, as far as just like the day-to-day life in our family. But we switch at work. So it just varies for everybody. No marriage is the same, nor should it be.
No.
And no woman's or man's path is going to be the same. And aren't we grateful?
Yeah. So do you guys do like a weekly date night and stuff too?
We're not very good at that.
Well, at least you're honest.
We're often like running kids around. I mean, our greatest joys are watching our kids play sports or do theater. So there's a lot of that. And then church stuff and community stuff. And, we'll go out to lunch during the week, sometimes, and that's our little minute alone. But
that's a date.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be at night.
Totally.
That's amazing. You guys are changing the world. You really are. Like I said, there's a couple months ago where I was like, hey, do you want to be on the podcast? Then I see you again. Hey, do you want to be on the podcast? Hey, because I know you're so busy, but there's a reason. And that is like, you exude light and you do so many good things to try to, what I feel, and you can tell me if you disagree with this or not, but to bring people to goodness, to God, to things that matter, and not any of this trivial nonsense where there's fighting and things like that. You do such a good job, and you put in countless hours to do it. You sacrifice your own wellness, your own sleep, your own comfort to really help others. So you're a light to a lot of people, and I want to say thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks for saying that. I'm so glad we finally got to be together and spend time together.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.